The trail is a metaphor for change. Although hiking, and specifically endurance hiking, is now a big part of my day-to-day, it's not just about exercise. It's about transformation. Each step is a movement towards clarity, purpose, and identity. But movement is one thing, sharing insights gained is another. As a U.S. Marine veteran, I created this space to help other veterans gain clarity, purpose, and identity. Let's walk this path together. This is Trail to Transformation.
Most people aren't broken, they're just dysregulated. Chronic stress, pain, anxiety, and burnout aren't mindset failures. They're nervous systems stuck in survival. I'm Leland Holgate, combat veteran and neuroscientist, and I created the Welcome Home method to help people rewire their nervous systems with breath. And to go deeper, visit thewillfulwarrior.com.
Hey, welcome back to the show, everybody. Thank you so much for supporting our effort here on Trail to Transformation TV. Once again, I'm here with Laura Cross, my producer, and so thankful for her for stepping up and helping me really put this show on the map. It's been an incredible journey. And of course, I want to thank everybody who's sub-hosted when was not here in my attempts to hike the Appalachian Trail. But I'm back, and I think we've got some numbers. I don't know if we're going to share them today. Our first season, I think, is completely recorded, and our numbers are pretty good so far. So I want to thank everybody who's watching or listening to these conversations. And my hope is, of course, not only that you're enjoying the conversation, but you're taking something from these conversations. You are making some changes if that's where your space is in life and you need to make those changes. Because today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the evolution of self in the 20 some minutes that we have to share today. And specifically, I get to be a bit vulnerable, and Laura gets to be a bit vulnerable too, as we do talk about the evolution of self. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
So my story really begins back in our COVID era. So 2020, 2021, and in 2021, I was simply going through a life crisis. And so I had been unemployed, and that period of unemployment was 12 months long. Again, COVID, so we're all isolated. Quarantine, we're required to be isolated. And I knew that having survived my fifth suicide attempt, things needed to be different. I needed to make some changes. Didn't know exactly what that was, but I knew for whatever reason, one thing specifically needed to be different. And for me, that was I needed to make friends. And that sounds kind of odd. Here I am, early 50s back at that time, and not really having really significant close friends despite multiple marriages and having two kids. And really, I lived an isolated life. And so when I found that every time I was at this point of complete desperation, there was nobody to kind of reach out to and ask for help. And even in another episode, I'm going to talk about what it really means to ask for help. There was nobody for me to ask. And so I'm in this desperate situation, but finally, I knew something needed to be different.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that you say that because that's kind of actually how I felt when I was younger, needed to have friends, which is what got me started in my whole people pleasing and, because I was always picked on and stuff because I was too sensitive, different. And, so for me, it was, you bent over backwards and trying to please everybody to get those friends and to do that. And it's overrated.
And it doesn't quite work out. And so what I did specifically because like I said, I lived rather isolated. The only place where I was or had a presence was LinkedIn. And we all know LinkedIn for its professional, connection, or that's where we make our professional networks. It's really the only place I knew anybody, and of course, given my 2,000 connections at that time, I may have only really known, and that's air quotes again, a dozen people, and even that dozen people, maybe a handful that I actually knew, in some respect. So for me to use this platform to say, hey, would you like to have a conversation? And of course, Zoom is growing and all of our virtual, meeting places are becoming a reality. Um, Many people said no, and that was okay. But the point being here is that for those who said yes, and I've said this on my previous, podcast conversations, the Question Guy, Coach's Corner, and the Envision Speaker Series. And if you want to, I think we could put a link to those. They're in my original YouTube channel. For those who were saying yes, they were saying yes for a reason, not only because, were we in quarantine and people still needed that human connection, even though it was virtual, they had a story to share. And that was critical because whether it was COVID related or not, they had overcome something and they wanted an opportunity to share it. So even if it was a perfect stranger, i.e., me, uh, they had this need to share their story. And, from these conversations, like I said, I began having recorded conversations because I wanted the opportunity to share their story. But something specific was happening with me. I was living vicariously, and I used that word for the past 5 years. I was living vicariously through their victory stories because I was not yet to own my own story. And it was through 5 years of this that I eventually learned to own my story, to share my story. And Laura, here we are now on
Yeah, and that takes a lot of courage to do that. And I think one of the things, probably with LinkedIn, since it's known as a professional, and I still find that now, if they're more transactional type of people, they don't have time still to have those conversations. But when there are people that are very heart centered and are into building relationships and getting to know more about you, and it's not just about a transaction, then those are normally who I find to connect with. But yeah, I can understand that, living, or I can relate to that, living vicariously through something else if you didn't feel like you had your own victory story, because they really can be empowering and inspiring, and to help you build up that courage. It's kind of like, okay, if this person can do this, well then so can I, right?
So, with that being as it is, let me ask you a question. I'm going to flip it real quick, and we didn't prepare for this. Do you remember a time where that was really the specificity in your life, that you were living vicariously through somebody else's story or somebody else's victory or somebody else's accomplishments, and you kind of felt that, man, I wish that was me?
I had, well, trying to be an entrepreneur and work from home and do that, knowing what you have, but when you don't have that outgoing personality, I'm an ambivert. Okay, I'm in the middle. So when I get to know somebody, I can be outgoing. When I don't really know you, yeah, I'm on the introvert side. It's like, okay, let them approach, let them do all of this first. But when you're struggling and you keep on doing this and you see these other people, and it's like, oh, okay, well, if they can do this, then, so can I. And you really start looking at that. And then when they start giving you feedback of how they feel about you, and then you start to realize that you are making a difference and maybe you didn't necessarily realize it, then that really also kind of helps boost up your confidence. Really, it came down, and it comes from the whole shyness, the whole being picked on thing. You don't like, and that's why I created a judgment-free space, right? Because I don't like being judged. So now I've gotten to the point where I don't care. People either resonate with me or they don't. But it took time to evolve to get to that and shed off what everybody else thinks. And so, yeah, being connecting and having those same kind of conversations with people from all over the world, brings in different perspectives. And Yeah, there's times my day might not be going great, but I meet a couple of people and it just, whoop, my whole day just lightened up and turned up so much better. And it could have been someone in Australia or, halfway across the world. It don't matter, but
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
something to that.
And we got to appreciate, our virtual space now, because we do get to have conversations with people we would have never had expected, or prior to the technology being developed, had the opportunity. If I have spoken to at least two people in Australia. So I'm here in Virginia. So everybody I usually connect with, if they're not necessarily, you know, west of the mountains, everything is, I'm sorry, east of the mountains, everything's been over Europe and Australia and all those places. I have yet to have a conversation with somebody in Hawaii. I'm still asking for that. So if there's somebody out there in Hawaii,
Oh, I know people
um,
there. I got you covered there too.
so, I know that's five hours behind me, so we'll have to make some time adjustments. Um, but those conversations really do become critical for our own lives, and I think it's the energy associated both with the individual that you're having a conversation with and the words being spoken, because we typically talk about things that are important to us. That's really where the conversations land. And when people are sharing a story where they have undergone some, and I don't want to necessarily use trauma because I use trauma in my own
Hmm.
world,
Challenges.
challenges, when they've overcome something, they want to share it. And there's positive power in the sharing, in the conversation, in the words that are being used. And I think, um, getting a little bit on the woo space here, and that's okay because I'm learning how to be comfortable in that space, is that affects not just the person speaking, but the people listening and hearing the words and absorbing them, for lack of a better word. They become our words, words that we think about more, feel in our heart, absorb in our body. And for me personally, that was helping me evolve into the person that can talk about the pain, talk about the trauma, talk about the problems. And when I was able to do that, owning that stuff, you know, I was able to face them better. And by facing them, learn at this point, not overcoming them,
Right.
but at least managing them, living with them, and more importantly, not to be afraid of them. Because I was always living in fear, of all the things that go up and are going on in here. Because, again, I lived an isolated life, but even more so because, who wants to talk to somebody who's, having multiple conversations in their own head because of my psychosis, or, afraid of the dark, we had that conversation.
Right.
That was one of my fears. I'm 56, 57 years old, and I live with, I sleep with a nightlight on, and, I still, you know, you know,
Most people that I know of have some kind of night light on, just so that when you get up to go to the bathroom, you don't trip or hit something
oh, that's
in the
legitimate.
dark. So
Yeah.
I'm 58. I got lights on. It's not necessarily afraid of the dark. It's just so that I can see and don't stub my toe, or I don't need to go to the doctors for breaking a toe because I walked into something. So
So I should change my story and say the light is on
that's
because
right.
I don't want to trip over
Change the
Ashley or anything
narrative.
like that. Yeah, change the narrative a bit. But the truth is that, I am afraid of the dark. I am afraid of the darkness. And even though I'm off the trail, and I said that wasn't an issue on the trail, I'm back home, and it seems to be the norm again. So I've kind of gone back to the norm. But I want to talk about the evolution of the conversation, because that was a big element of my change. Like I said, living vicariously, then learning to be comfortable with my own story,
Mm.
learning to be comfortable becoming vulnerable and sharing my own story. So much so that the evolution of my quote unquote podcast, The Question Guy, Coach's Corner, the Envision Speaker Series. Um, in 2024, so 3 years post my, fifth suicide attempt, I connected with some people in North Carolina. I live in Virginia, North Carolina, and somebody north of me, the Hope Foundation and We Care partnerships, and I would like to get them on this conversation at some point. We collaborated on what we called Spark, and it's an acronym, SPARK. I forget specifically what that acronym stood for, but what we did is um, a suicide awareness, a suicide prevention panel member discussion live streamed to Shannon Kramer, and I'll just give her a shout out. Her Facebook, we did a live stream on the 21st, which was a Saturday, 21st of 20, September 21st. I'm going to get the date right, 2024, because that was like such an incredible experience. It was the Envision Speaker Series, so I am literally orchestrating. I think we had seven, if not eight, at very least seven members on the panel across a church, church front
Right.
stage for 2 hours. And so to take somebody such as myself who, even though I taught in the college classroom, never really was in this space where, I am in charge of something like this massive conversation, but it was the evolution of all the smaller conversations. Every conversation prepped me for the next conversation, and the next conversation prepped me for the next conversation. All of those conversations change you. They changed me, right?
Right.
They changed me. They changed my perception on life. Because not only was I living vicariously, but I was also getting the feedback that you talked about earlier. You know, people, you're normal. Again, whenever that normal is. But
Nobody's normal.
but it's okay to be who you are. And I guess that's the message that needs to be shared.
Yeah.
Whether you think whatever normal is, it's okay to be who you are. And learning that it's okay to be who I am, even in my my nuances and all of the things that I still maybe like you a bit shy and introverted in social situations. Being able to evolve to a place where somebody says they trust you enough, or they trust you, where they bring you into their circle, right? And the value that you've been bringing to the conversation virtually, all those conversations, all of those podcasts. I'm now in a situation where it's live. There's an audience on Facebook. There's an audience in the church. I've got 7 people who are on the panel who are trusting me with the conversation to make sure that all of their voices get heard, and in such a way that, and even though it's 2 years ago now, that was such an incredible experience, and the people that I met from that experience, I still keep in touch with from time to time. But that was a life-altering, situation that I think was the next pivotal moment where I could start thinking about, even though it wasn't called Treader Transformation, or at least the TV show wasn't necessarily in my head just yet, but it said, if I could do this, right?
Right.
What else is possible? And so I asked you, I said, Laura, I need help.
Well, and it's similar to mine, right? Because I started by doing interviews with people with my self-care group, because I just felt when people can hear from you, hear what challenges you went through, how you got over them, they can resonate better with you and how you might be able to support them, rather than saying, here's my profile picture, this is what I do, connect with me. And so really, I just called them interviews, and everybody kept calling it a podcast. I said, it's just an interview. It's not a podcast. And then I had someone ask me, did you ever think about doing a TV show? And I was like, well, already got this going. Why not? So, like you said, it evolves. There are things that come up. You may not know that's where it's leading, but then it came to. And of course, I could have said no. And it was uncomfortable at first because that's a whole new platform, knowing that they connect into millions of viewers every month. You don't know who's on there. And if you're someone that doesn't like to get up and speak in front of someone like me, it's like, yeah, okay, you know, but it turned out to be a good thing. I always say if it helps even just one person or reaches one person, then it's doing its job. Because people I think need to be seen and heard,
Mhm.
right? And I greatly admire those that have gotten to that point that can share their story. Because there's so many out there that are suffering because they're not sharing their story. But when other people can share and they can say, that person can relate to what I'm going through. I'm not the only one.
Yeah, yeah. And for me, the evolution now is to do that one thing that you said, many people are afraid of. It's speaking in front of on a stage. So this has given me the confidence. I'm just going to say strength, but the confidence to do that. Even though I've hired a business speaking coach, to understand the business of it and to prep for keynotes and all those other things. The other thing is to actually do it, right? And that's always, the next gut wrenching thing that you've got to do. I know I've got to do it without being paid for the event, and so I've got to join my local Rotary Club and kind of get my name out there, speak in front of small audiences. I have the message, right? It's now at the point where the foundation is a real thing, the TV show is a real thing. The Appalachian Trail through hike is a real thing, even though I didn't complete it this time. So all of the pieces of the puzzle are coming together to build this, what Suzanne Jabor and I had talked about. I don't think specifically on this TV show, but in other conversations I've had with her. She calls it a cathedral project, something so big that you may not be able to complete it in your lifetime. And that's bringing the number of veterans who die by suicide, which now, depending on the source, is anywhere from 17 to 22, if not higher, to zero. And so that's the core mission, that's the core message, that's the core vision, is to help veterans themselves recognize that they do have value, purpose, identity, and they'll find it through community, through walking, and through the interactions with other people. We just got to give them the opportunity to make that happen. So, with a minute left, Laura,
Yeah.
tell us what the next evolution for you is, because I just said for me, it's to get on stage. So, where are you going from here?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily concerned about going on stage, getting on stage. I've gotten up in front talking to people. I have worked with speaker coaches. What my suggestion would be is don't lose who you are. Because when I first started the TV show, I had so much of that stuff going in my head. How many times did I say, how many do that? We're not polished. People don't have to be polished. People should know that anybody can do this. And so I just went, and everything went so much smoother when I just was being who I, can be. But for me, it's just to impact as many people as possible for them to take charge of their own health and not so easily give up their power to everybody else because they have the ability to heal. So
Well,
it's just
let's
where I'm
let's
headed.
leave this. Yeah, let's leave the TV show with that message. It's a great message. Laura, thank you for this conversation, and as always, for everybody out there, I'll see you on the trail. Take care. Thank you for watching Trail to Transformation TV. To support these conversations or to support the foundation, I would ask that you go to givebutter.com/T3missionorg. That's the letter T, the number 3, MISSIONORG. Or go directly to our website at t3mission.org and click the donate button. Or just scan the QR code as you see it on the screen. And as always, I will see you on the trail.